Welcome to Season 2 of Gray Maybe, a limited series podcast and social experiment based on this season's topic, the body. My name is Jillian Schmitz. I'm a professional dancer, actor, teacher, author, artist, and cat lover. Through my own personal journey of recovery, I've found that things aren't just black or white, or as simple as yes or no. For me, in my recovery, there has been mostly gray area and a lot of maybes. In most of my stories, you can find the gray maybe. I will be sharing my own process through personal stories, interviews, and hopefully stories from listeners in an effort to help lessen the stigma and shame of disordered eating disorders, and body image. If you'd like to share your story of ED recovery on this podcast, anonymous or otherwise, please email graymaybestories@gmail.com. graymaybestories@gmail.com. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please subscribe on whichever platform you're using to catch future episodes of Gray Maybe. A note before we begin. The topic of disordered eating disorders, body dysmorphia, and other behavior related to the body may not be difficult for me to share anymore, but it wasn't always this way. I recognize and anticipate the possibility of judgment or disbelief about my experiences, ranging from my own family members to strangers, in addition to the potentiality of losing certain opportunities for publicizing my own experiences. My stories and the stories of others on this podcast are told through the lens of our own experience. The revelation of our process is ours to tell. If you disagree with the views or stories on this podcast, know that we are not speaking on anything other than our own experiences and viewpoints. Take what you like and leave the rest. Nothing expressed or mentioned in this podcast is an endorsement or is meant to be taken as suggestion or advice. It is strictly the sharing of our own experiences and recovery. Any feelings this podcast activates in the listener is for the listener to process and recover from. Any criticism you have based on these experiences and choices are yours, and they are not anyone else's burden to carry. Trigger warning: Ozempic, eating disorders, disordered eating, restriction, anorexia, body dysmorphia, fat phobia, racism, sexism, abortion, the Oscars, performance-enhancing drugs, steroids, and physical injury. Welcome, everybody, back to the Gray Maybe podcast. I'm psyched you came back again. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, and check out some other episodes. Today, little different episode today. I don't normally do these types of episodes, but it did start to become maybe a great idea. It did start to become more and more in my head that maybe I should do this as an episode. So today, I'm going to have on my editor, sound engineer, counsel, editor, producer, sound engineer, all the above. His name is Roderick. You might have heard me reference him in the past. He has been on one of the episodes in season 1 of Gray Maybe. And I'm bringing him back today because we have often a lot of conversations about the podcast. And in the last week and a half, maybe even 2 weeks, we've been having a lot of conversation surrounding kind of two major topics that are kind of intertwined and have a lot of other subtopics that we wanted to talk about. So I'm going to intro Roderick. Welcome back to being on the podcast. You're normally making behind the scenes, making it happen with the podcast. So welcome to Gray Maybe on the podcast.
Thank you for having me back as a guest, I guess. I'm a guest now?
Yeah, you're a guest.
Yes, thanks again.
I know it's so comfortable for you, but I'm glad you're here and doing it. So you had said to me, Roderick, like a week and a half or two ago. Well, I'll say first. First, I read this article in the Cut magazine. I read this article, and it's entitled, well, first of all, hold up. Let me give I always do a note before we begin, but this is an additional note before we begin on this topic. If you're listening to this podcast, if you are highly triggered right now, if you are in your disease, if you are actively really in it, this may not be the episode for you. I'm going to say that right off the bat because this episode, highly triggering, highly triggering. So if you think you can listen to this episode and just take it in as information, maybe relate to the triggering nature of it without acting out, this is going to be the best situation for you. Because this episode is, to me, even so triggering, I just want to say that because the last thing I want to do is to give anybody fuel for their fire or to help them actively engage in any harmful behaviors to their self. So with that being said, I was triggered reading an article in the Cut magazine. The article is entitled Life After Food, and it is about a new drug. It's not necessarily new, but they are finding that this drug is a diabetes drug. It actually causes, as a side effect, appetite suppressant, and it has now become a rich person's very highly sought after celebrity drug for weight loss. And it's called Ozempic. It is for diabetes. It lowers blood sugar levels, but it also subdues appetite, and people usually lose weight on it. Apparently, it's temporary. The minute you go off of it, you would gain that weight back from what people are saying. But this article in itself, while does have quite a bit of factual information in it about the drug and about the whole situation, it's incredibly triggering. So I read this article. It was super triggering. And then I saw a special on Ozempic on TV. And I didn't tell anyone. I didn't really mention that I read this terrible, triggering article. People on Twitter were talking about it. I didn't say really much to anyone about it. And then literally days later, Roderick said to me, "Have you heard of Ozempic?" And that's when I was like, yes, I have. And I just read a terrible article on it, which I would entitle as or put under the category of eating disorder porn. Anything you're looking for as a fetish for the thing that you can't quite deal with. And that's how I took that article. Had you heard of Ozempic before? You saw an article, Roderick. You saw a different article.
That's right. I'd seen a different article, but I'd also heard of Ozempic before.
And had you heard it? You heard about it past it being a diabetes drug? Because it's like on TV. Ozempic. It's that one.
Yeah. I was listening to something else, and while I didn't hear the name of the actual drug, because when it was finally named Ozempic by someone, I was like, this is what people are using. But I'd heard mention of someone saying there's a diabetes drug that's also being used as like this new magic weight loss thing.
Yes. So this article in general, while the topic of Ozempic and losing weight or buying some kind of like a magic pill, for lack of better words, because it's actually an injection, while that is very tempting for someone who's kind of thinks they can fix their life problems in losing 10 pounds, which is me. Every problem I think I have, I can fix by losing 10 pounds. That doesn't make sense. I know that, but that's how my little eating disorder works. So in addition to that just being what Ozempic kind of is in pop culture right now, this article in The Cut has literally given people with, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not trying to take people's inventory or diagnose anyone, but the people they're interviewing in this are like, it sounds like is screaming eating disorder, the people who they've interviewed. And that's partially what is so triggering. One of the people that's in this article basically, is ordering this Ozempic, quote unquote, from a LA provider she's never seen or met. She pays $625 for a monthly supply. So number one, even if I wanted to act out this fantasy of losing 10 pounds on Ozempic, I cannot afford $625 a month for my habit. And on top of that, I hate needles and injections. I only do it unless I absolutely medically have to. If I had to do this on a weekly basis, I don't know if I would be able to. So that's another blockade for me for reality. But nonetheless, she is not even getting Ozempic because that's the brand name, and she does not have diabetes. So she is getting generic semaglutide. Is that how you think that would be pronounced?
I'm not looking at the actual name, but I'm going to trust your judgment there.
Semaglutide?
Yeah, I've seen it before, but I can't remember. Because I know there's, in addition to there being a brand name of Ozempic, there's another brand name that's also being used for people that starts with a W. That's mentioned in the article as well.
Okay. Okay. I might find that as I skim through. I've highlighted some of the parts. And so she's getting already a synthetic or a non brand of the active ingredient. She
Mm-hmm.
has to mix and prepare it for the injection. Um, and all I have to say about that is there are other people who mix and inject, and those people do. It's called being a heroin addict. So, and again, no judgment. This is just an observation, but this is this article is super toxic. That's my main point about this article. And like I said, I don't normally do episodes like this where I come on and just vent, I guess. Roderick's helping me vent, but this is the thing. This is what it's like dealing with any kind of recovery, right? Things are going to come up. There's going to be activations. There's going to be triggers, quote unquote, however you want to call that. And it's going to test your recovery and it's going to test where you're at. And this article certainly did it for me. It certainly was like really got me amped up about some of this, some of the people that they have quoted in here. What else? This same person who's mixing and injecting their own weight loss drug, or drug for not the purpose that they're supposed to be using it for. It says that during busy periods when she might not be able to closely monitor or prepare her food and get to the gym daily, that this drug Ozempic takes nearly a full-time job of body maintenance off her mind. I mean, that's every eating disorders like dream, is to not have to think about all that stuff and still get the results. And I guess apparently this particular person they interviewed before she got Ozempic says that she would hole up in her hotel on film shoots, juice cleansing to fit into her costumes. And now she says you can eat 1.5 meals a day, and then you're kind of hungry at night, but it's not terrible. You can drink some tea with magnesium and maybe take a Xanax and get to sleep. That entire paragraph.
It doesn't sound like a good mix of anything.
No, the whole thing. The
Yeah.
whole thing is like, to me, screaming. I recognize it, right? I recognize it. I recognize being busy and then being freaked out that you can't do all of your behaviors. I recognize the preparing the food, the monitoring, the gym daily. Back in the day, I was really kind of into going to the gym. That's where I did my time, that's where I was punished for what I did. The cleanse, don't like to even get started on the quote unquote, the juice cleanses, like you need to cleanse your system from something, or which is really juice cleanses, in my opinion, is just a way to fast and starve essentially without passing out. Some people maybe can do juice cleanses and be fine. I cannot. That's slippery slope for me.
On that subject, do you remember around, I don't know, 2007, 2008, there was some sort of popular thing that involved peppers and lemon juice?
Yeah, cayenne pepper. It was I believe it's water, lemon, cayenne pepper, and apple cider vinegar.
What was that supposed to do?
It's a cleanse. It's a cleanse. And when you ask people what a cleanse does, they're like, "Oh, you lose weight." Well, yeah, if you haven't eaten anything and you just keep shitting, sorry, pardon to be gross, but you're going to lose some weight, and if you're not properly hydrated, you are going to lose weight, and weight does fluctuate. In addition, I just have to say this because I do feel like this is a bit of information. You can look it up. You are not going to get toxins out of your skin by cleansing with juice. You're not going to get toxins out of your body by going into a sauna. Your kidneys and your liver, your organs are what gets rid of toxins. So I need a shirt that says something about being on a cleanse and it being my kidneys or something. Because I like being in LA, especially. It's always about cleansing. It's always about the most healthy way to lose the most weight and be the smallest, and the most healthy way of having a disorder. At least that's been my experience. I don't know if other people can relate to that. I'm shuffling papers. Forgive me. Make sure I have the real deal in front of me. So yeah, that cayenne pepper, apple cider, lemon terribleness. It smelled like feet and hot sauce. You're gonna drink that for who knows how long, as long as you can stand it. And listen, as far as fasting goes, because that's basically a fast if you're doing that one. There, some people see results. Fasting can be good for some people. Some people do it for religious reasons. You know, fine. As someone who struggles with an eating disorder that loves to restrict, fasting is very dangerous for me personally, and it's not great for my blood sugar. Personally, I don't do well with that. And maybe it's because of all the years that I have done that to myself, so it's hard to say. Um, Also, Roderick, because you are a keen to the 90s like I am, there was a drug cocktail of that was happening, that was really popular in the 90s. Um, I'm not going to be able to pronounce these things, but they are fenfluramine and phentermine. So fen, right? Is that
Right.
it? Fen?
Yeah.
That's what
That was
everybody called it.
that was the nickname. Yeah. There were two fins, one with an F and one with a PH, if I remember.
That's right. FenPhen. Those are the two drugs, and everybody was into it. It was like everyone's like, oh, it gives me so much energy. Oh, I lose so much weight. And turns out that they ended up taking it off the market because it caused cardio valve damage, and people died from it. Um, so this isn't the first time, obviously, that there's been like, oh, a drug that everybody's into, and oh my gosh, it's magical. As far as Ozempic goes, it has been on the market for a minute. It has shown great results in people with diabetes, but the FDA does warn against using it for non-diabetic purposes.
Mm-hmm.
They alert that there could be the development of thyroid tumors, or that it has shown that in rodents anyways. And it can be dangerous for people who have a history of pancreatitis or certain types of thyroid cancer. And there could be other issues for people who are non-diabetic that they don't really know yet. There is another one that was in another article that talked about a life-threatening ailment called intestinal obstruction. So that can be life-threatening, but it also would include surgery if you were bad, if you did experience intestinal obstruction and it was a severe enough case that would require surgery and can be life-threatening. And I believe that has something to do with that. In addition to making you not as desirable to eat, it slows down your digestive system, which might have something to do with food moving through and causing obstruction. I'm unsure, but that seems to be what that particular article was more about. There's also this article just goes on to talk about another woman who's confessed to driving an hour into Jersey to find a pharmacy that stocked this stuff. And she said if they had told her that there's an increased chance of lung cancer, she said she wouldn't take it. But she realizes, and she said this is humiliating, but she's like, I mean, thyroid cancer is not that bad, right? So, like, I don't know if these are the best people they should have picked for this article. That's all I'm going to say. It seems like, I mean, or maybe this is the best people. That's exactly the point, right?
Yeah, that sounds like the folks that we need to hear from who are experiencing these extreme cases. Because, I mean, well, and I say extreme is that it may sound extreme, but it might be pretty common, just that the behavior that they are partaking in.
Well, and that's what they're saying. Like, this article basically, and some of the other articles that have been written about Ozempic, is that it's like all the rage. Like, all these rich people are doing it. All the, all the agents at CAA are doing it. All the, like, that is just anybody who's down a few pounds is on it. Anybody who's not finishing their lunch is on it. That's kind of what the air of these articles is, which is not great. Whether it's true or not, it's not great, right? It's not great to then look around and be like, oh my God, everyone's doing something I'm not. It's like the biggest glorification and best ad campaign for Ozempic. And I hope I'm not doing that right now by discussing it. I personally think that this is cheating. No, it's cheating. It's a magical pill, but it also could be harmful to your health. But in addition to that, this drug is for diabetes patients. It's for people who really struggle for this. It is not for people who want to lose 10 pounds. It's not for actresses that need to get in their Oscars dress. Speaking of Oscars,
it's weird because it's a drug that helps people, but it's being consumed mostly to the detriment of those folks by people that it's actually hurting more, because they're not using it for its intended purpose, and so it has an increased negative impact on various communities.
Agreed. So there is like a morality to this that I just wanted to, like what we just said, that I do want to introduce. Like, if you are actively trying to seek Ozempic, and you don't need it, you may be taking that prescription from someone who does. And, I don't know if that matters to you or not as a person, but I hope it would, for most of the people that might be listening. It just sucks, man. It sucks. The whole thing sucks because I do feel like we were heading into like a really great place with body positivity. And I've said oftentimes on this podcast and on other podcasts that I really enjoy and I want, and I am a big supporter of the body positivity movement, even if I struggle with my own body positivity. I would love to be at a place where I'm super positive about my body. But that's a work in progress. And I've said many times that if I can get to tolerance, that's a good day. If I can tolerate my body and how I feel in it. Nonetheless, I want us to move towards body positivity. I want us to move towards acceptance and diversity in bodies, shapes, sizes, everything, and what health looks like on different people and different types of bodies. So it sucks that I feel like we were going someplace, and now, not that Ozempic is going to pull us back, but it does kind of feel like that. And it's not just Ozempic. It's not just the specials. It's not just the articles. It's not just the pop culture buzz. I didn't watch the Oscars, but I heard and I saw snippets. And it seems like there's a lot of thinness that is back in a way that maybe is the opposite of where we were going. So it seems like, from what I've heard from other people's observations and from the little snippets I saw, that it was a very thin, very frail Oscars. Now, in addition to that, I happened to see on some media outlet some kind of buzz about the Kardashians downsizing, getting slimmer, getting smaller, removing the big butts or whatever that is. I don't know if that's possible, but that was what the article was insinuating.
They can't remove their real butts.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what you can do nowadays, but whatever it was insinuating and whatever it was showing via photos, when I saw, and which one was it? It was the one who, I'm not familiar with I'm familiar as I cannot be living in life about the Kardashians. I don't watch their show. I don't buy their products. I'm not into that whole camp. But which is the one, not Kim, is it Khloe? Khloe's the one that is like the more
the tallest one?
The tallest one, right? That's Khloe?
That's correct. That is
the
correct.
one who dated the basketball star who ended up at the Bunny Ranch half alive.
I'm glad you proceeded past basketball star because that would have not helped me at all. But yes,
I know.
Yeah, this the tallest one who was married to Lamar Odom.
I didn't want to say the wrong basketball player's name, so that's why I said it like that. I thought it was Lamar Odom, but I am not a basketball. You know sports. I do not. So this is your realm of expertise. So Khloe, the article that I saw, or the media post, whatever I saw, about a Kardashian downsizing, it was of her. And the photo that I saw did look like she had lost a grip of weight, or her body shape had changed. And that body shape was no longer curvy Kardashian. It was wafy, boxy, not whatever, however you want to describe that. It looked very, very slim in comparison to what their kind of brand has been. And when I saw that, it bummed me out. It bummed me out because I was like, oh no. Now everyone's going to get skinny. Everyone's going to want skinny. We're not going to be able to like have asses and be curvy and have extra weight, like without it not being trendy, without it not being attractive, without it not being celebrated. And unfortunately, like that's kind of how it is. Like women's bodies are trendy, and people who are famous set those trends. And the Oscars and a bunch of frail actresses with clothing hanging off of them and collarbones showing. It's not great. It's not great for everyone. And I talked to you a little bit about this in the past, Roderick. Like, I can't help but think that maybe that kind of thinness is some kind of like backlash to some of the more current body positivity artists like Lizzo, or there are other unapologetic Black women that are dominating pop culture. Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion. Like, is this some kind of like white supremacy like backlash?
As a non-white supremacist, I'm not completely sure, but I can definitely say that since around 2015, 2016, I'm sure you recall what happened around that time. We started to see people push back on things that felt too un-American, and usually what that means is not too
not white.
Right. So yeah, you know how people are in general, as far as how they think people should look. And
but who are those people? Like, who? I know what people think how things should look. Who are those people?
Well, I mean, again, trends that are set by European fashion people, which Europe's not exactly black, or
Right.
or whatever is popular culture in America, which is usually influenced by some non-white person, but it seeps into the mainstream via a group like the Kardashians, or, well, she's Puerto Rican, Jennifer Lopez, because it's just more, they're not black, right? And so a lot of times it's easier for people to digest.
More digestible for
Right.
white people is to see like some kind of maybe not white but definitely not black person promote something.
Right, because it's not. This takes me back to Sir Mix-a-Lot and Baby Got Back.
Take us all the way back, please.
Right. I watched in preparation for this podcast. I rewatched the video, and one, it wasn't quite how I remembered it, because that was 1991, 92. So watching it as a young teen versus now, the video is one way more ridiculous than I remembered it, but not it's kind of like it wasn't. It was like an absurdist parody sort of video. Like, he was very intentional, it appears, the way that the video was done. The lyrics, it wasn't completely, for that time period, it wasn't completely misogynistic, I will say that. And in some places, people like it. It was more celebratory he talked about, hey, I don't want these women that look like they are, as you described, rail thin.
To the beanpole models in the magazine? Is that
right?
Beanpole models in the magazine.
That was those are what set the trends. I say set the trends. Those are what people were supposed to look like, regardless of how they got that way, or whatever it took for them to look that way. And so,
right.
But yeah, that was one of the things that at the time it was semi-popular because the song became popular, and then shortly thereafter, there was In Living Color, and there were Fly Girls And they were all curvaceous. Most of them were black, and then this Jennifer Lopez, she just stood out from everybody.
I don't know if we want to say that they were super curvaceous. I don't know. They were all really slim. They were very
well. I mean, you can be slim and curvaceous, but they definitely they still weren't whatever the size 0 model,
right?
With just straight bodies. Some would even say they look like teenage boys. Right. That was not what a fly girl looked like. But again, right. It wasn't. When people started to quote embrace big butts, it wasn't on a black woman. It was on a Jennifer Lopez. It was, and then years later, it was on a Kim Kardashian.
Side note: my friend Terrence Yates, was in "Baby Got Back" in the music video. She is still a dancer. She's a teacher. She's a real estate agent, and she's a good friend of mine. And I always bring up the fact that she's in that video because that video is legendary. She said that Sir Mix-a-Lot was the nicest person she worked with.
One of my favorites growing up.
Yes, she said he was just fantastic. So I give Terrence Yates, a little shout out. She's still dancing. She looks the same. Fortunately for her, unfortunately for everybody else who has to age. But I'm going to tag her so everyone can look her up because she's fantastic. But nonetheless, yes. So in order to be celebrated for having a big butt, it was not, even though the song was about black women essentially, especially with the prologue of the white Becky's talking, it still wasn't totally cool unless it was J-Lo or someone who was more digestibly closer to whiteness.
Right. And I mean, as you pointed out, I mean, it's not, I mean, the flag girls, for instance, these, it was, I mean, I don't want to get into describing whatever. These were not, even by most standards, they were pretty small women, right? They weren't, it wasn't, we're not, when people are like, oh, they're so, their butts are so big or they're so curvaceous, they were just, at the most average size women, if that.
Right. I'm looking at like culturally, right? We just came off of, in the last few years, right? We have a black female vice president. Lizzo has dominated the airwaves. Megan Thee Stallion has dominated the airwaves. Cardi B, wet ass pussy, right? So not only in blackness.
I can't believe you did that to me. Go ahead.
But not only in blackness, but also in celebration of women, right? Like say what you will about WAP, the song, the wet ass pussy song, right? Say what you want about it. It is unapologetic about being a woman and what that is, right? Unapologetic, bold, brazen, like zero fucks to give about that. So coming off of that and body inclusivity, cancel culture, if you really want to call it cancel culture, I personally like to call it accountability culture, of people requiring companies to sell things for the actual general public to represent more than just a size 0. Coming off of all of that, to then smack straight into Dobbs, smack straight into Ozempic, smack straight into, Oscars and the thinness and the whiteness still.
I think the hashtag was Oscars so white a few years ago.
And it still is.
Yeah.
And so are the Tonys. I mean, so I'm wondering, like, just as an observer, is this not part of the backlash for all of that? So to women, yeah, we celebrated you. Now get back in your box. To black people, brown people, minorities, every once in a while a minority gets a win, right? But there were Asian people who won at the Oscars. Cool. It's the first one ever or the second one in 100 years or some shit like that. It's still not the norm. right? There is still whiteness is still the norm. Whiteness is still whatever the default. Okay, so, and I know I don't need to tell you that, but so I'm wondering, like, is this not like the backlash of we let you have your fun, we let you feel what it's like to have a little bit of acceptance. Now get back in your box, lose the weight. There is no place for all of this. Get back to where it's comfortable for those of us who are still in charge. And if you won't, we will punish you. If we can't do it by persuasion, by persuasion, if we can't do it by pressure, if we can't do it by choice, then we will just find a way to force you back in. That's what it feels like to me. That's what I'm seeing.
I said 2015 and 2016. This is actually, I'm not being completely accurate or fair to the person who caused all this backlash. It was the election of Barack Obama. This is
a blacklash.
Yeah.
It's blacklash.
That sounds like a television show. You might want to trademark that before we get out of here. So yes, it goes back to that. I think everything is different, and it was just years and years of the country looks like it's going in a different direction, and then when the 20
for who?
Well, for
the newly coming majority.
Yeah,
for the up and coming majority.
Look, I mean, change for anyone who has not had to deal with any change is always
right. Telling someone there's going to be change who's in a cush position is not going to be happy.
And the fact that it's always described as whether it's black people, whether it's women, whether it's other marginalized groups. It's like, because I want to be treated like a whole person, that means that you're going to lose like your part of your. It's like, no, that's how. What is it about all of us being people that seems like you're losing something? So that's what the bigger issue is here. And so, like I said, going back to 2008, then fast forward to whatever happened in 2010, then 2016, and it's like people, 2016 and all of the stuff that we've experienced the 4 years after that of people just being openly, forget racist, mean, right? Mm-hmm. On top of all of that, and it being acceptable behavior, like there's no real consequence for for the group that chooses to act out the way that they do. I mean, now it's just like, look, I am tired of these people on my television. I am tired of being told that I have to put up with them looking all kinds of ways, and everybody's bothered. I mean, I think what Dave mentioned it before on the previous episode. Your friend Dave,
mm-hmm.
It's
Dave
like
Dave Colin,
right? I mean, he said in his episode, it's like people were nicer to me when I lost weight. Mm-hmm. Like it was just something that he noticed, and people, whether they want to recognize it or not, with many of their prejudices, it's like, one, I don't want to see a black person on my TV. I don't want to see.
You're speaking as someone else, or are you as a black man not wanting to see a black person on
yes,
TV?
These are quotes, right? the folks rejecting all of this, it's like, I don't want to see black people on my TV. I don't want to see fat people on my TV. I don't want to see especially fat black people on my TV. I don't want to see gay fat black people on my TV. It's all of those things that I don't know. I was about to say makes these decisions, but their decisions are, someone down the line tells them, it's like, we should probably go this way because the majority feels this way. Well, the majority's been the same group forever, and we know how a lot of them have felt in particular areas, and so it's like, why should we be moving in a direction that we know is not inclusive of the entire country, just because some folks are offended by who they see on television?
Yeah, well, the whole point of feeling like you're somehow going to experience less if everybody is treated equal is telling. You're telling on yourself when people act like that, because it's like, oh, you don't want to be treated like these other people have been treated. Why do we treat them badly or something? Like, do you know what I'm saying? It's like, you don't want to, if you're afraid that other people will somehow, if you're like people who are afraid of, when white people are afraid of becoming the minority, right? Which arguably could also be behind the Dobbs decision, is that there are certain religions and certain people and certain groups of people that are afraid that for some reason the white race is going to cease to exist and therefore we need to have more white babies. And if anybody doesn't think that abortion, Dobbs, Roe v. Wade, all of it is tied in with white supremacy, they can fight me. Like, because it is, let's be honest, it 100% is. And the fact of the matter is, if you are so afraid of becoming a minority, if you as a white person are so afraid of becoming a minority, why is that? Because we don't treat minorities very well?
I think we have to ask the folks who, again, and I don't know where they are. I'm not sure I bump into them too much because we don't hang in the same circles. But we need someone to tell us what is the problem with feeling like you're going to be in the minority. I mean, we hear the crazy stuff. It's like, well, we are headed towards extinction. Well, who are we? Like who? No,
right.
No one.
You're not separate from the human race. The human race is far from extinct.
Right. So, it's
no, they don't want to become minorities because they look around and they see how we treat minorities. They see how they treat minorities.
Yes, this country has a history of mistreating anyone who is not generally a white man. So it's like, if we're in the minority, then they're definitely going to treat us like that. And that's a hard argument to make when you look at how much everyone has put up with since they've been in this country who has not been a white man. And it's like there's definitely, if there's been no revolt up until this point. So I don't think that it will happen anytime soon unless, of course, these folks have just, they just decide that they want to fight. Then their country goes to hell. And everybody has to defend themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Good times.
I can't stop seeing, this is slightly not off topic, but in alignment with a little bit earlier what we were talking about. Like, I cannot stop seeing, every time I feel like I want to lose weight or get smaller or be, I don't know whatever that is, I have been reminding myself that someone like Lizzo, unapologetic, loud and proud, I can't imagine that anybody gets more hate mail than Lizzo. I can't imagine that anybody does. And there's there's reasons for that, right? Like the those in charge, patriarchies, white supremacy, all those things, right? She is the direct opposite of that. How dare you be black? How dare you be famous? How dare you be talented? How dare you be larger than what we would like you to be? How dare you be okay with it? How dare you have a body that we can't rule? How dare you be unruly? And I can't imagine that she doesn't get terrible hate mail from people who just can't stomach the fact that she could be so bold. How dare you? And when I see someone like her, it makes me want to rebel against this role of thinness, this role of fragility, like being frail and fragile. The fragility of not only just white fragility, but the fragility of body, right? Because that is what has been presented to women, especially white women. Be small, be frail, be feminine, be quiet, sit in the corner, have the babies, support the men, and mostly the white men. And not only will you be rewarded with safety, but you will be protected. Just keep doing that. And there is a big part of that has to do with thinness. And I don't think it gets talked about enough. And that has direct correlation to do with how white women vote. Voting to support men, right? Whatever their white men's vote are, they're going to vote in alliance because they're, I'm assuming, would garner some kind of safety. A lot of people, a lot of women still might not be able to live without whatever their husband is providing.
Mm-hmm.
Nonetheless, all of that, it makes me want, like, anytime I start getting like, I need to be smaller, I need to be thinner, like, which is all the time, I bump up against this feminism because as much as my eating disorder rules my mind so much, my spirit cannot climb down from being in like full feminist. Like there's just, I cannot be quiet. I cannot stand down. I just can't. I can't. I'd rather die. I really would. I'd rather die. I can't. So that is stronger. My voice in women having equality that's stronger. That's stronger than the ED in most scenarios. And if it's not, I'd like it to be. Not long after we started talking about Ozempic, you also wanted to bring up, or you asked me about PEDs, performance enhancing drugs. And you had asked me like, hey, is that like a thing in the dance community? Did you ask me that? Do you remember that?
I do remember. It was sparked by something I saw recently in the news in reference to some sport, some athlete or something. But yeah, it was. I was curious because dancers are athletes, and there's an added pressure to being a dancer from the perspective of, in most cases, when it comes to sports, as long as you can do your job and do it well, nobody's complaining about how you look. Mm-hmm. And I know for dancers, that is not the case. You can't just be good. You also have to look good. And also, it got me thinking about, again, with the athlete comparison, just the fact that dancers aren't always 20 years old. Right. And so, we've had on the pod, Kim Hale, who, she mentioned it, dancing all of her life, which has been, in some form or fashion for so many years, like you feel that and the pressure to perform. And again, I know, for younger people, having to look a certain way, or if, you were 20 and now you're 30 and you feel like, you start to feel and look, like an adult. But you're 30, you're still young. But there's
right.
pressure when you're competing against, people 18, 19, 20.
Yeah.
And so is there a drug testing situation that like in sports where, and so I was just curious if PEDs, performance enhancing drugs, were something that you were familiar with in the dance community.
Yeah. And as far as I know, number one, no, we don't get tested. There's no testing for anything but COVID. We are only tested for COVID, and pre-COVID, we were not tested for anything. As far as performance-enhancing drugs, aka like steroids, I don't know any women that are on steroids. Now, I say that, but I had a cortisone shot in my hip like years ago. So actually, I don't know if I can say that for myself. Are cortisone shots like just going everywhere and everyone's getting on? Probably not. I don't think a ton of dancers are relying on cortisone shots. I knew that my doctor had recommended me get one for a hip labrum. I have a hip labrum tear. And so when I was diagnosed with that, the doctor had said, well, let me give you a shot of cortisone to see how that feels for it. And then after that, going forward, we can see what we want to do. And it was helpful. It really relieved a lot of back tightness. That was a secondary symptom of the hip injury. And it was always known to me, though, that a cortisone shot is like a a quick, easy, temporary situation. Like you're going to get it. It's going to cause immediate relief. You're going to feel great, but it is not forever, and it's not something you can keep doing. So I only had that one shot, and my hip still has some issues. I've found ways to kind of PT it. It definitely, like, I may have to have a hip replacement when I'm not much older. I don't know, or older. A lot of dancers have hip replacements. So we'll see on that, but that's the only time I've done something like that. Now, I'm also speaking as a lady. For people who identify as male or male-born or however we want to identify, I can't speak on it because I don't really know. Now, I have heard whispers. I have heard whispers of a lot of male dancers doing steroids to maintain muscle mass, doing steroids to, look a certain way. I don't know how rampant it is or not, and I don't know if people would be honest enough with me about it or if anyone would be honest. But so I've heard whispers of it. I don't know how rampant it is, but I'm sure it is around.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I was curious about that because, again, whether it's steroids or, there's a HGH, human growth hormones, and I'm going to mess up the name for EPO. I think that was popular in the cycling realm. But a lot of it is about, for, again, athletes, and this is why I thought about you all, for recovery, right? Mm-hmm. It's, and, there aren't many sports where, again, it's required for you to look a certain way or to be huge for the most part.
Right.
It's mainly, it's like, are you available to play? Like, are you available to dance, right? And so, you see a lot of people that end up, over the years going that route because it gets them back on the court faster or back on the field if they were injured for some reason. It's not, a lot of, there have been various scandals in baseball and football and not so much basketball, but mainly in baseball. Most of these people, you would not have, there was nothing about them that suggested that you would have thought they were taking anything because they were taking something that wasn't making them get huge. It wasn't a cosmetic thing. You just noticed that they never seemed to get hurt.
Bigger, stronger, faster.
Right. They never seemed to get hurt. Or, they played for a longer than, the previous generations played.
Right.
And so, that's when you started to see it's like, well, it's
and
clearly
everyone's like,
something different.
It's just glucosamine. It's just glucosamine. Now we've got some chelated glucosamine.
All right. There's always an excuse for something that's, it's not exactly on the up and up. But yeah, I was curious about that. And PEDs, Ozempic, whatever, needles. All of it.
I've got to say that some kind of drug that could help with recovery is very appealing to me because I am in the older dancer category and I am still using my body and I am still dancing. Like when I teach, I'm still dancing. And if I'm doing a dance job, I'm still dancing. And the recovery, I barely showed anything last night when I taught, for instance. And I, had to show one little combo on video for them. It wasn't, anything too crazy. And then I did show a couple of jumps. And this morning, I've got to say, my joints were a little unhappy. And so the idea that you could take a steroid and it could, or if you had an injury, that could cut that injury. Like if I would have known after my knee surgery that, if I could have taken steroids, I could be back in half the time. Oh, I would have done it. And I don't know if that would have been feasible for that type of injury. Probably not. I don't know. But I would have figured out a way to do it. That was then. Nowadays, I don't know if I would because of how I feel about a lot of things, a little different than back then. That was the beginning of a lot of my journey in various recoveries. So, it's definitely that kind of stuff is extremely seductive, right? Mm-hmm. The idea that could cut you time, get you back, take away the pain of recovery or whatever it is, because we know steroids for someone who is in an autoimmune situation can help them. Steroids, if you're taking them and you're healthy, can cause a lot of other problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know what all of them are, and I don't have an article in front of me that lists them all.
But I bet you saw a movie about it.
I did see a movie. Well, I saw a couple movies. So We both were talking about the movie Bigger, Stronger, Faster, which is a documentary based on steroid use. And that came out quite a few years ago. I want to say, I think it came out in 2015 or 2014, maybe.
Oh no, it's probably it was. I want to say before 2010.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm way too soon. Yeah. So, okay. It's been out for a long time. Bigger, Stronger, Faster. There's also a sequel to it called Pharma Thugs. Pharmacy Thugs? Pharma Thugs?
Thugs is in the name. And that came out in 2015. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we will. Okay. Before I try to Google at the same time. Okay. So, that there's a second part that talks about pharmaceuticals or prescribed drugs. But the movie Bigger, Stronger, Faster, really great film. And in addition to that film, which it basically shows people who, I mean, for lack of a better word, are kind of obsessed with steroids. Like the people that they're interviewing, they're really obsessed. They're like, they want to be bigger, they want to be strong, they want to be faster, what all those things are. But they're like, like at one point, one of the guys is like, yeah, I promised my wife I would go off of them, but I'm going to go back on them and I'm going to lie to her, basically, about it.
He did say that, yeah.
Right? And it's like, whoa, like that sounds more like that's the kind of stuff someone who struggles with alcohol would do. That's the kind of thing that someone who's, got an opiate addiction is going to do. Like, that's not something that someone recreational is going to do. Like, it's just a little bit like, it seems a little crazy. It seems a little obsessive. It seems a little out of control. Like, right, that you need this thing so bad to make your body a certain way so that you can feel okay. And that seems not healthy as an observer.
I mean, as you said, you need something to make you feel a certain way. That's not healthy for you. I mean, it sounds like an addiction.
Yeah.
I mean, to things, drugs, alcohol, that sort of stuff. It sounds like a similar response,
right?
To taking, steroids.
Yeah, insert thing here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all the same to me, anyways. And there was another movie, and I don't know if it's newer or not, but I just recently saw it, and it's called Bigorexia. And we'll also put this in the show notes. So Bigorexia it's a movie, a documentary style movie about people who are in the, what's it called? Bodybuilding profession.
Mm-hmm.
Or competing, and it follows a bunch of these different bodybuilders around who all seem to have different various forms of body dysmorphia. And their body dysmorphia, instead of it presenting like mine does, which is obsessions with how my body looks and feels on any given day, or, being very obsessed about certain one body parts, like, oh, my hips and butt are too big, my thighs are too big, my nose is too big, my skin is sagging, I have a wrinkle. Like, these are all the things that I get really obsessed about. My profile is terrible, I can't move my head to the side, those types of things that I also imagine is much worse than they are in my mind. For instance, on any given day, like, I can physically see that I've gained 10 pounds, but I haven't. It's not physically possible, but I can see that. I think I can see that. So instead of it presenting like that for people who have bigorexia, theirs is flipped upside down, which means they are very preoccupied with being small. So they are all about getting bigger, being bigger, having bigger muscles, having more mass, being stronger, and some of the people they're following on this documentary have gone through extreme lengths to attain some of this stuff. Like, we're talking not just full life obsession and changing, but like injecting things into your arms to have a bicep that looks freakishly large. It's kind of like the same thing that you see with people who do too much plastic surgery. Like, mm-hmm. that kind of body dysmorphia where someone's like, leave your nose alone. Like, stop doing that. Like, stop doing that to your nose. Like, that's what these people are doing, like injecting like toxins into some kind of substance into their bicep to make them freakishly large. Yes. And Yeah, and there's another person on this documentary who is a trans person, and she wants to be feminine, but also can't stand being small, which is like really complicated, right? Like she just keeps talking about how she wants to be more feminine. She wants to be more female passing or whatever that is for her. But at the same time, was a bodybuilder, still is a bodybuilder on some level, but doesn't want to be small, like is so afraid of being small. Um, so you kind of watch her journey with that. And it's just so interesting because it is all the same. It's the symptoms present differently, or the I guess the topic of the symptom is different, but it is all the same. Like I look at these people and I'm like, that's nuts. But it is not lost on me that I am nuts. Like it's not, I see them as me. It's just, I'm like, to me, I watch them, I'm like, that's so insane. But also I am that. I just am, not currently acting out the things that I want to do or think I want to do. Whereas these people in this movie are actively acting them out.
Yeah, it was, and it came out, I think, if I recall, 2020.
Okay. And bigorexia is coined a term. Like they're talking about it now as a term. It's, and like I could probably pull up a definition on it. It's someone with muscle dysmorphia, or bigorexia believes that they are small and skinny despite being typically or even unusually muscular. They compulsively work out and control their diet to increase their muscularity.
Right, and I mean, you saw some of the guys in there. I mean, one
Yeah.
of them was described as the largest, like the largest bodybuilder in the world, just
Mm-hmm.
just on pounds alone.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I feel small. Like I look.
Right.
He was just up. He was like, I look small today.
Right.
And yeah, it was hard to explain, but again, I mean, it's like you said. I mean, it's dysmorphia.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see what others see. I mean, they see
Yeah.
themselves different, and whether it was that or the odd shaped body parts that had been injected with stuff, and it was like, well, I mean, it may look weird to you, but I'm getting attention that I would not have gotten
Mm-hmm.
had I not done this thing. Which again, regardless of the health benefits, I mean, well, lack of health benefits, like
Mm-hmm.
how negative it was, they were
Right.
still
The
like, oh,
risks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Regardless of the risk, they were like, yeah, but I don't know. People still, or is someone going to speak to me if I don't have this weird looking thing that's also dying in my
Right.
arm? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
On
sickness.
that, off topic but on topic, something we haven't discussed. I did see some kind of like a special on people who were like obsessed with certain types of plastic surgery. And this one girl was obsessed with, I don't know, like getting a better butt or something. And she had like, I don't know if she had other procedures done, but she had like a botched job or something went horribly wrong. And she had like massive health problems from it. Like, I think she got injected in her butt with like something that was not what it was supposed to be. And she doesn't, still to this day, doesn't even know what it was. It could have been cement. It could have been like, they have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
And she had to have it taken out because she was starting to have like an allergic reaction to it, like some kind of like her body was repelling it. So they're trying to get it out and they can't get everything out. They can only get so much of it out. And the doctor that was helping get it out was just like, whatever you did, you really fucked yourself up essentially. Like, this is terrible. And then what did she do? Not long after, she made an appointment to go somewhere in Central America, South America, and have some other procedure done. Like, and she's like, I know I'm stupid for doing this. Like, I know I am, but I can't not, like that to me is, it's all, everybody get in the same boat. Everybody move over.
Yeah.
Save a seat. It's all the same. It's all the same because it's all the same. And I've said this in a different podcast episode that all the things, if people want to get honest, it all stems from the same thing. The guy who says, I feel small. The girl who says, like, I feel like I'm not attractive or I don't feel like I have the right body. Me saying, I feel, fat. I feel big. I feel whatever that is. it's all a feel. Like, I feel. But these are not things that you can actually feel.
Mm-hmm.
They're physicalities. I don't feel having brown eyes. I don't feel having blonde hair, even though it's fake. I don't feel any of those things, right? I don't feel physicalities. But that is where it starts and ends, the I feel. And the people in Bigorexia, they even said a bunch of times, they're like, well, how do you cure this with people? And the answer kept coming back. This is therapy. This is, cognitive behavioral therapy. This is a mind thing. It is not a physical thing.
Right.
And so every time I hear someone say, I feel small, or I feel like it's like there, stops and ends there, I feel. Yeah, you feel. Like, find someone to talk about those feelings.
As the doctors in the movie said, therapy would help. I mean, that is what most of the subjects in the movie were missing, because one of the doctors pointed is like, we're dealing with guys who tend to not want to go to the doctor because they don't want to. Well, in this particular instance, it's like these are people who don't want to be told they're unhealthy, and they are doing a lot of things to look at the way that they are doing. They're doing things that's unhealthy, that's making them look the way they look. And so it's like one of those things where, like, you need help, psychologically, but also you definitely need help internally, physically, because of what you're doing to your body. So they tend to not get the best advice, unless something tragic happens, like one of the subject, something had to happen to him before he decided, at that point he couldn't avoid the doctors. Right. So,
right.
So, it was at that point where
Are you talking about the
help.
one dude that had injected everything in his biceps?
No. Well, not that guy. I don't think. I think he's going to do something else. But the guy who he had the small child at the very beginning.
Are you talking about Bigger, Stronger, Faster? Or are you talking about Bigorexia?
Bigorexia.
He had the small child. Oh, yes, that guy. Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it was but yeah, it was, I think it, something had to happen to him.
Oh, yes.
For him to get the help that he needed and recognize that, like, this was unsustainable.
And what happened to him is not uncommon for steroid use, by the way.
Right.
He basically got an infection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So people who are injecting steroids, just FYI, like, getting infection from that is not uncommon, and it's can be really bad. Like, we're talking like septic, we're talking like losing limbs, we're talking like that type of infection.
Right. I mean, but take that back to the beginning of in the article of this woman who's mixing her own chemicals.
Right.
From she got it from essentially a dealer in Los Angeles. That like you said, she doesn't know who it's coming from.
Right.
She just know, and she has to mix it, which it's
sure
most people.
It's also synthetic. It's not the drug.
Like, it's something that she shouldn't be doing, right? And then she has to inject it into herself. It's hard to describe, right? That someone has to clearly be dealing with something to say, this stranger is sending me this thing. I really don't know what's in it. I'm paying a bunch of money for it, and I'm going to take my chances because I've got to lose. I have to lose these 10 pounds by Friday.
Well, at this point, for someone like that, it's not even I have to lose these 10 pounds by Friday. It's I have to keep these 10 pounds off.
Right.
And that is very much like, I am no longer doing heroin because I like the high. I'm doing it so that I don't come down.
Right. I want to feel like this all the time.
Right. I don't want to kick. Anybody who's familiar with heroin addiction, like, that's the deal. That's what it becomes. To me, there's just like that story, that particular person and their story in this cut article is like the parallel to a heroin addict is just like unprecedented to me. I'm like, okay, I guess that's what we're doing now. Like, all right.
She's doing so much that alone's unhealthy. Right. So that's probably, I mean, it's clearly that's unsupervised. And then you just factor in that, like, she talks about what her routine is just to get to sleep. I mean, she's just filling herself with a bunch of stuff that, it's just unhealthy. and unsupervised.
Yeah. Yeah.
So hopefully, after the article comes out, which it is at this point, maybe it took for her to read it. We hope to see
Yes.
like this is unsustainable. I think I told you a
Yes.
story about. I told you a story about a similar experience with someone I knew. I don't know if this is going to help. Probably not. It probably feels weird, but this doesn't seem like something you can keep doing.
Mm-hmm.
It just like this is like you do this every day, and there's everything on the label of this thing tells you can't do this every day. But you're
What is that? What are you talking about? What are you referencing?
well, I don't want to,
You knew someone.
I knew someone who was taking
some kind of drug for something
right,
they
and
shouldn't
it
have been
was-
taking it for.
exactly.
Okay. So
exactly.
they're taking a drug for a different reason other than what its intended purpose is for.
And ignoring all of the warnings about
Right.
Dosage and everything else.
Right.
So,
Dosage, how long you should be on the medication, et cetera,
Right.
et cetera.
Right. They were blowing through all of those suggested guardrails and obviously not supervised again.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was that's what this person sounds like.
I don't think there's anything wrong with ever telling someone, hey, I'm worried about this for you. Like, I'm worried about you and what, this, I feel like this could be
Right.
dangerous. I care about you and I would hate to see this hurt you in any way. So, hey, I'm just going to say that. I think that's kind of the only thing you can ever really do. Some people believe in interventions. Some people believe in being even more forceful and all kinds of things. I don't really know if that works because for someone who's struggling with something like that, it's hard enough to get to the place where you are willing to do recovery because it's not easy. And that definitely has to come from the individual because it's already going to be hard. So you've got to be on board as the person to do that hard thing. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to work. It's already, hard enough to stay right if you want it, let alone if you don't. So, yeah. There's also, just if anybody else is still pumped and wanting to do Ozempic, there is a side effect called Ozempic face, which is where you lose weight too fast and your face sags, and then you have to go get a bunch of fillers to look normal again. So there's that as well if anybody was getting really pumped on possibly doing a Ozempic.
Save your money, folks.
Save your money. That $600 to $900 a month could easily go somewhere else.
Yes.
That's another thing. Like, who is affording that? I mean, clearly some people, but that is insane. I can't afford that habit.
I don't know much about the entertainment industry. I feel like they make a lot of money, so I'm going to assume it's them. That the people at the Oscars, right?
Yeah, it just depends who and where. Who
people
and where
at the Oscars
makes a
have
lot
some
of money.
extra cash, right?
Yeah. I mean, is there anything else you want to add to this? All the stuff we talked about. I feel like we covered kind of the things that we've been talking about.
Ozempic awareness. That's what we're here.
Ozempic awareness. Yes. Don't get pulled in. Don't get pulled in.
And think about the people who actually need the drug.
Yeah, that too. And, be unruly. Be unruly. You don't need to be tiny. You don't need to be skinny. Be unruly.
And there's no such thing as magic.
That's true, right? Well, there is. It's called Ozempic, and that's why they... Oh, it's magic. Ozempic.
That's some marketing.
You got to hand it to them. Yeah, and I can only imagine that in the future they're going to really gung-ho with that as a weight loss thing, and it might be fine for people who need to lose weight for health. But for everybody else, we still don't know the side effects of that, if you care. Nonetheless, Roderick, thanks for talking about this with me. I know it's not your MO to be on the pod. I know you very much like being behind the scenes. But I do enjoy our conversations and all this stuff, and it helps me express myself having you talk with me. So thank you for being willing to do that on these topics.
You're welcome. Happy to be the 100th guest.
Not quite yet.
We're almost there. We're almost there.
We'll get there. All right. Well, thanks, Roderick. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening, everybody. And I hope you learned something. And I hope you don't do Ozempic unless you need it for your health and prescribed by a doctor. Not even 48 hours after Roderick and I wrapped this episode, a well-known celebrity comes up in my Twitter feed, touting the latest in provocative dieting and triggering outrage. A clip of the frail starlet tells of her health regimen, in which she admits to a massively restrictive diet with all the perks of privilege to counter inflammation that she says she experiences due to long COVID. She quickly corrects 36 hours after public outrage that she doesn't always eat that restrictive and eats normal meals. This comes a bit too late after publicly boasting about it on a podcast. She's quick to comment that it's not for everyone, while the pros weighing in say it isn't really for anyone. I wonder how many people with long COVID have already started her same regimen in desperation to feel better. I have no way of knowing if she's one of the many rich celebrities on Ozempic, but it seems the most obvious answer when effortlessly she describes her dangerously low caloric input and fasting routine. In this moment, to me, she's the epitome of all the things Roderick and I talked about. White, thin, and Hollywood royalty. I can't put my finger on what exactly is the most inflammatory part. Is it the paraded thinness under the guise of health? Is it the aloof ethnic and monetary privilege? Is it magic? Most likely, it's all of it. And that magic very well could be Ozempic. I don't actually care what celebrities do, but I can't ignore the feeling of being gaslit that somehow any of this shit is normal, natural, easy, effortless, or healthy. What other things don't we get to see, hidden behind the people who are feeding us our fashion, our entertainment, and our targeted ads? It's served to us on a silver platter, but who is it really serving? Just a reminder, for anyone who needs to hear it, you don't need to wait until you're sick enough to get help. In fact, you don't have to be sick at all, just a desire to feel a little better. If you're listening and right now you're struggling with an ED, disordered eating, or other behaviors, welcome. Know that whatever you're feeling, there are those among us that have probably felt it too. You're not alone. If you're listening because you have someone you love in your life that is suffering or is in recovery for an ED, welcome. You are also not alone. Even having an eating disorder myself, I have not reacted the best I could to others who were struggling before my own recovery. I've attached the do's and don'ts of how to deal with someone suffering in the show notes, as well as how to contact myself and various links for help and recovery when and if you're ready. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you were able to find something relatable in today's episode. As I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, this is also a social experiment to see if in telling my story, I can embolden listeners to share their stories. If you'd like me to read your recovery story on this topic, anonymous or otherwise, on the podcast, please email graymaybestories@gmail.com, graymaybestories@gmail.com. Thank you to everyone who helped make this Gray Maybe podcast happen. Producer and editor Roderick Barge, cover photo by Jose Perez, music licensed by Pixabay, special counsel Jada Ellingham and Roderick Barge. Special shout out to supporter Patty Olgan. If you'd like to support this podcast, please rate, share, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye for now.